My name is Ladiedottie Gallagher, and I'm going to draw my life. So, I was born in 1989 in Lowell, Massachusetts. I got my name Datev, which is an Armenian name that means give wings, because my mom is Armenian. That's where I get my dark curly hair from. My dad is Irish, that's where I get my freckles, and my last name, Gallagher. I spent my first few years growing up in a giant house my dad had built us. He's an architect and a great artist, and my mom was the owner and head chef of a popular French restaurant, so I'm not surprised I grew up to love art and food so much. A mere 14 months after I was born, my new brother showed up, and we're so close in age that I've always kind of felt like a twin more than a big sister. A couple years later, my dad got a job in sunny Florida, so we decided it was time for the family to make a move. We moved into a beautiful little house that was just walking distance from the beach. When it came time for my brother and I to go to school, my parents had to make a tough decision. My brother and I had a very unique upbringing. We were raised vegan, which meant no meat, fish, dairy products like eggs and milk in our diet. And we were never allowed to have junk food either. No soda, no cookies, no candy, no sugar, no harsh chemicals, and no preservatives. My parents wanted us to have the best education possible in an environment that would embrace our lifestyle. Luckily, we found the perfect place. My parents enrolled us in a small private Montessori school where my mom got a job as a secretary because she wasn't quite ready to let her babies go out into the world without her yet. She says she cried on her first day of school because she could see my brother and I during recess from the window to our office, and we were just standing in the middle of the playground holding hands while all the other children played around us. Thankfully, our shyness wore off pretty quickly and we both started making friends of our own. If you aren't familiar with the term Montessori school, it is basically a method of education developed by Dr. Maria Montessori. It focuses on hands-on learning and practical life skills. Core values like respect and peace were integrated into our everyday schooling, and as students we were encouraged to focus on and develop our particular strengths. My brother excelled in subjects like math and logic. I remember he was one of the first kids in his class to correctly count to 100. Which was pretty great to listen to due to the fact that he had a giant gap between his two front teeth, which made him say things like "thixth" and "theven." I, on the other hand, struggled in almost all of my subjects, particularly math and reading. But it wasn't until a couple years later, after turning in a writing assignment, that my teacher suggested that I might have dyslexia, which is a learning disability that affects reading comprehension, spelling, and fluency. Apparently, the writing assignment I turned in to my teacher was full of jumbled words and backwards letters. I still have a drawing I did in second grade, which I signed my name completely backwards. So, I was going to have to get some tutoring if I was going to be able to keep up with the other students. I remember getting extremely frustrated and embarrassed with how long it took me to read things. I would constantly compare myself to my other friends who were reading and writing with ease. It wasn't until the end of the day when we had art class that I could finally feel comfortable. Everything came so easily to me in art class. I could get completely lost in a project, and I could finally stop comparing myself to the other kids. Soon, I found that my friends were asking me for help. They would ask me to help them sketch something, or sculpt things, or they would ask me my advice on what color to paint something. This is when my confidence started to grow. I got involved with all types of arts and performing arts. I performed in school plays. Shakespeare was always my favorite. I even joined a youth circus for a couple years where I performed tricks on roller skates. I stopped focusing on how much I was struggling and started feeling really good about myself. Once I stopped focusing on it, I started to naturally get better at things like reading and writing. Once reading became easier, I realized how much I loved discovering new stories and reading about imaginary lands and unusual characters. I would even spend hours at home coming up with stories of my own. So by the time I got to middle school, I was very happy with who I was, and I had formed some pretty close relationships with some girls that are still my best friends today. This is also around the time that I decided I was sick of taking the cheese off my pizza at my friends' birthday parties, and I told my dad I would like to start eating dairy products, and that's when I became a vegetarian instead of a vegan. Even though I started eating pizza, I still remained very healthy. Respecting my body has always been extremely important to me. So I continued to eat well, and I joined our school's cross-country team. Earlier, I mentioned I went to a small school, but I'm not sure you understand how small exactly. Our campus was big. It was on 100 acres of Florida woods, so alligators and wild boars were a part of our everyday life. And our classrooms were in these beautiful white buildings my dad had designed, but there were only 200 students from preschool to seniors. When I graduated, I only had 9 people in my class. Oh, and I forgot to mention, in 6th grade, my dad became my school's headmaster. So my school was where my family was, where my best and closest friends I had grown up with were, and it was where my extracurricular activities were. It was very important to me, and it was almost like a second home. Alright, fast forward to junior year. My school got involved with the Sarasota Film Festival, which is a very well-known film festival in my hometown, and for the first time they were introducing a youth category that encouraged high schoolers to enter their films. To me, this seemed like another great opportunity for me to express myself artistically. So, without much experience, I made my first short film and entered it. It might sound a little dramatic, but after I made that film, I knew without a doubt that I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I was ecstatic when I got a call telling me my film had been accepted. It was the coolest experience watching my film on a giant screen in a real movie theater. I also loved watching films made by other kids my age. One boy even won a scholarship for having the best film in our category. That's when I decided that next year, that scholarship would be mine. My senior year of high school, I was under a lot of pressure. I became captain of the cross-country team and I was training to run a marathon. I was working on my next film to enter into the film festival, and I was applying to colleges. More than anything, I wanted to get into that Florida State University College of Motion Picture Arts. But they only accept 30 students a year, and it was a very difficult program to get into. So I got to work and I started checking things off my list. I completed my first marathon with my friends and family cheering me on at the finish line. I got my film accepted to the film festival, and as I promised myself, I won the scholarship and I used the money to buy myself a laptop and some editing software. Finally, all I needed was to get accepted to my dream school. So when I eventually got the call, I was devastated to find out I was not accepted. I decided to go to FSU anyway and work my butt off, and maybe, just maybe, they would accept me the following semester. So I took all the same classes the other film students were taking, and I made friends with the faculty and staff, and I boosted my resume as much as possible. Eventually, my hard work paid off, and I was accepted as one of 5 transfers. I spent the next 3.5 years in an amazing film program that prepared me with many skills and challenged me to develop myself as a filmmaker. I graduated with a lot of experience under my belt, and many new and extremely talented friends. After graduation, a lot of my classmates decided to move out to Los Angeles to pursue their dreams. It's hard to explain, but I just had a feeling in my gut that that is not what I was meant to do. So when my good friend Hannah invited me to go backpacking in Europe with her for 6 weeks, it sounded like a great opportunity for me to gain some new perspective, and hopefully I would figure out what I wanted to do with my life. We traveled from Spain to Italy to France to Germany, and my eyes were open to a world of possibility I'd never considered before. I realized just how much I really loved traveling and adventure. The new experience opened my mind to so many new story ideas with every city we visited and every new and interesting person I met. I wondered if I could somehow make exploring and filmmaking into a new job for myself. So when I returned to America, I was inspired by one of those girls I grew up with to start a video diary of my life. Her and her husband had been vlogging for several years, and I thought I would give it a shot. So on July 25th, 2011, I started my YouTube channel, Ladiedottie. And here I am nearly 2 years later, still making videos. Vlogging has allowed me to go on all types of adventures, including our cross-country road trip that has led me to California. I've never been more inspired and optimistic about my future. Vlogging has allowed me time to work on my own stories, and it has provided me with many amazing experiences that I am fortunate enough to share with you all. I have no idea what's in store for me next, but I'm so happy all of you get to join me on my journey.